Welcome back to App Stories. Today's episode is brought to you by Capacities.io. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is none other than, wait for it, Brendon Bigley. Hey, Brendon.
Hello, everybody. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We are giving Federico the day off. He is not going to be with us today, but we have Brendon continuing our
Federico vacation, more like.
It is. He's off today, and this is kind of our continuation of interviews with hosts of other shows on the MacStories family of podcasts, because Brendon is my co-host with Federico on NPC, which is Next Portable Console, all about the games we take with us. And I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed doing NPC since we started, Brendon, because it's just a little off from everything else that Federico and I do. And it's nice to sit down and chat with you every couple of weeks about video game handhelds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally mutual feeling. I could tell from listening to Unwind specifically that you guys were like bursting at the seams to talk about this stuff
we
more.
Were.
And I know, in our initial conversations, even just like before we were talking about doing NPC, but just, mutually like hopping on calls and hanging out.
Yeah.
You were like, I get the sense that you're feeling the same way, because every once in a while on Into the Aether, I would bring up a handheld that I was using, and just like really run with it and turn it into a whole solo segment. And Steven just has to sit there and be like, yes, honey, that sounds great.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny because that really is the backstory for us. Like Federico and I had literally talked for years about doing something with video games. And it probably goes back at least as far as like 2018, 2019. And then, the whole pandemic thing kind of put every new projects on ice for a while. And by the time we were coming out of that period, we were really just super itching to do it. And then we saw with the explosion of handhelds, the moment was perfect for a show like that, because there's not really anybody else doing that, I don't think. And, as people probably have figured out, these interviews are all about hyping our other shows, because I know that sometimes it is hard for people to get started on a new podcast. They don't, maybe they know one or two of the hosts, but they don't know everybody. So we are here to introduce Brendon to everyone, as I am the Chief Officer of Hype at MacStories, if people haven't figured that out yet. This is another title that I've given myself.
CHO, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Yep, Chief Hype Officer. So today, though, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. I guess I should mention that we are going to do an iPhone-related topic soon on NPC. We're going to talk about controllers, because everybody knows by now, I think, that I have a controller problem. I have a very hard time not buying controllers. I have literally a giant plastic bin in my closet of my office, Brendon, that's nothing but controllers.
I also have that same plastic bin in my bedroom, of all places, which is the wrong place for it.
It's the wrong place for it. But yeah, I've done a better job, I think, lately of not buying every controller, although I did pick up that cracked controller that you and I were talking about. It's like a transparent white controller. Look at that. See, it's still in the box. Oh, that's the outside.
Yeah,
the
this
box.
is just the sleeve.
Okay, well, at least you opened it. The worst thing is, you have a real controller problem if you buy controllers and then you don't take them out of the box. You just have them stacked up around. I don't have that right now. Yeah. But we're going to talk about this on NPC, because I think that there are more good options now than there have been in a very long time. Absolutely. And I think a lot of that has to do with the addition of USB-C to the iPhone and to the iPad, for that matter, which already had it. But yeah.
I think the USB-C addition, just allowing us to tap into the already huge swath of Android focus controllers is a godsend. It's interesting. It's interesting as we're starting to see, though, developers and manufacturers start to really experiment, saying, we've talked about this on NPC before, but saying, the iPhone being such a ubiquitous design allows manufacturers to take a little bit more risk. I think a lot of the telescopic controllers that you get, or that exist right now, kind of exist in that form factor mainly because they're trying to adapt to every single device under the sun. Whereas if you're designing for the iPhone 16 lineup, for example, it's a lot easier to like take some more risks, make some more interesting stuff. And now that that's starting to bubble up, I'm getting really, really stoked about the world of iPhone controllers.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff coming. So we'll have that on an episode of NPC soon, maybe the next episode. So check it out.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to you first about a topic you and I have talked about before on NPC, which is Apple and gaming, and kind of the perennial. What's up with that? What's going on with
seriously? Yeah,
Apple and gaming. And the reason that this is on my mind yet again is because just this past week, Apple announced, Remedy Entertainment
yes,
announced that Control Ultimate Edition is coming to the Mac. Now, this is something that was previewed at WWDC, but this past week we got news that it's coming February 12th, 2025. So a couple of months from now, which, that's good to hear. I think that what was more interesting to me than the date is that there was an article on Tom's Guide that I linked to on Mac Stories where one of their reporters got a very short demo of the game, and was told specifically by Apple that it's being developed with the Apple Metal and other APIs that are developed for gaming, which I think is good because, I would suspect that Apple probably has financed that on some level to make that happen.
yes, I would assume so.
I would think so. It's a $39.99 game. I got a lot of comments from people online about this. It's like, oh, look at Apple with its 5-year-old game. And yeah, it is. It's a 5-year-old game. It came out in 2019. But it is also, I think, still considered a game that a lot of hardware is tested against only because it's fairly taxing in terms of resources on any computer or console system.
That game with its art direction specifically, really, I think when ray tracing started becoming a little bit more of the norm in graphics engines, you started to see just a lot of ray tracing being added to games that didn't really need it, or in some cases subverted the artistic intent of the development teams who were, art directing those worlds. The one that I always think about, which is maybe a little bit unfair, and not everybody agrees with me on it, is Judgment, which is a spin-off of the Yakuza or Like a Dragon franchise. Judgment came out and I thought looked beautiful, and then they did a next-gen upgrade that added ray tracing and replaced all of the baked-in lighting solutions with just ray tracing lighting solutions instead. And it literally changes the vibe of a lot of important scenes in ways that would not be noticeable unless they had made a change like that. And I think Control is a fascinating example of this because they, in a lot of ways, leapfrogged that experimentation with ray tracing and just went fully in using that to their advantage to design an aesthetic and a vibe and an art direction that I think propelled it into, in my opinion, one of the more beautiful games that's come out in the last generation. So I totally agree with you. I think, to me, it kind of stands, despite being older, it stands tall as a great example of how to use modern game technology in a really fascinating way. You have that, plus also, you're running through an office building, shooting at desks, and hundreds of reams of paper flying in the air. There's a lot of interesting reasons that people test against Control, and I think it makes a lot of sense to have that game in particular on the Mac. Although you and I think, agree that it feels kind of weird to have these one-off every 6-month big game announcements.
Right.
In terms of what's coming to the Mac, Control Ultimate Edition makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it does. And I think it'll be interesting to me to see how well it runs on different Macs, because I think where Apple's heading is that I expect that the M4 Macs should be able to run this game pretty well.
Yeah, solidly, I would hope.
I would hope so too. And maybe the M3s too. The M3s weren't that big a jump up from the M2s though, but the M4s are a pretty significant jump, especially on the higher end. So I'm expecting it'll be able to do it. Now, the thing about that is though, that if you want an M4 laptop, especially if you're going with a Pro or a Max, like a MacBook Pro, that's an expensive computer, and so I would never recommend to anybody that they buy an expensive Mac just to do games. I just don't think that the catalog's there or the performance is really necessarily there. But I do kind of see a future, and I think it's going to be a very slow burn where this technology kind of filters down to things like the MacBook Air and on down, and these games become more playable by a bigger audience, especially once they get down to the Air, which I think is the best-selling laptop that Apple makes, that there is hope for a Mac gaming future still, where Apple doesn't need to finance these games, assuming that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
And developers will have a market that's big enough that they can actually make some money where it makes sense to do this with Apple's technologies. I think, the fact that Apple is using its own technologies is part of the problem here, because that's just an added expense. You got to have somebody on staff that knows those APIs and is able to do that, or contract out with, someone to port it for you. So, I mean, there's a lot of variables here. It's the size of the market, it's the different technology, and it's Apple's willingness to market these and treat them. I think Apple needs to start treating games like entertainment and less like apps, personally. I mean, you and I have talked about that on NPC. That's a big part of it too. But
yeah,
I don't know. I always had this glimmer of hope with Mac gaming. I can't let go of it, Brendon. No matter what I do.
I'm the exact same way. I mean, you and I are totally baked into the Apple ecosystem, obviously. So like, it would be nice if we had as many options as our PC friends. And as a person who only recently got a PC, I was using Bluesky a lot as a way of playing Windows games on my Mac. And just seeing how well that worked as like a total layman who didn't understand it really at all, but just kind of understood it as similar to Proton, or the thing that the Steam Deck uses to port PC games into Linux games in real time. I was pretty blown away by it, and my thought was, get any smart person who understands development using this, and maybe you can get a bunch of ports over on the App Store. And one of the things that you and I have talked about on NBC as well is the rumor that Apple might be launching a game specific version of the App Store, which I think in a lot of ways solves the problem of getting games running through the Apple porting toolkit, and then submitting them to the App Store. I think there's a version of a game-specific App Store that has different rules that apply to it and different regulations and guidelines. That isn't as tightly controlled as the App Store, but also has its own game-specific lineup there that I think would make a lot of sense. And I'm with you. Like, I'm just holding out hope more than anything. But at the moment, and I don't want to be too cynical, it does kind of feel like things like this happen every 2 to 3 months, because like it looks good internally in like a corporate revenue document to be like, and our continued focus on gaming, we have Game of the Year contender Control Ultimate Edition now on the Mac, and then somebody 2 executive layers above is like, great job, and that's it.
Right. Yesterday, Federico and I were taking bets on which was going to be the AAA title that gets one of Apple's App of the Year awards, because last year it was Lies of P, and for the longest time Apple
Great
PR was it is a great video game, but for a long time it was Apple PR's best friend. And there's going to be a new best friend for Apple PR, and Federico thinks it's going to be No Man's Sky, and I say it's going to be Death Stranding director's cut. So
interesting. Yeah, I think Kojima's working on Death Stranding 2 right now. I could see them wanting to court his favor a little more as time goes on, especially because
ride that hype a little bit too, I think, right?
Yeah, because he has Death Stranding 2. I think that's going to be a PlayStation exclusive for at least 5 to 12 months, and then after that, he has a Microsoft exclusive game it's built entirely on the Microsoft Cloud ecosystem. So it's streaming only. At least that's how it was announced. Who knows if that'll actually be the thing that launches? But maybe they want a Kojima game all to themselves. That'd be nice. That'd be fun.
That'd be nice. I really don't see that. Talk about optimism. Let's. I think we need to switch topics now.
It's raining outside, John. I need to bring some sunshine into my life.
All right. Well, I won't take that hope from you.
Maybe
Brendon.
Some blue sky, even.
Maybe some blue sky. Let's talk about it. Look at that! Wow, what a transition, Brendon Bigley. You get a gold star for that one. All right, blue sky. It's out. It's been out. It's not new.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, it's the hotness, and everybody's talking about it. A lot of other podcasts have talked about it. We won't bore people too many with too many of the issues, but I did want to get your take on it, because for me, the reason we moved a bunch of Mac Stories accounts onto Bluesky over a weekend was that I was sitting on my couch on a Saturday night, and I had heard that everybody was, a lot of people were joining Bluesky. So I thought, I'm going to check this out again. I hadn't been over there in a while. My account had been set up for about a year before that, I think. And I posted a picture of the Apple polishing cloth. And the next morning I woke up with 500 new followers. And I thought to myself, you know what? It's time
Perfect
to
investment. I should buy a second Apple polishing cloth.
Yes. No, I thought time to ride the wave. And
yes.
And because, for us, the audiences, we want to be where the audience is, right? And it's split. Obviously, people are coming back over from X to Bluesky. There's just like a lot of hype around Bluesky. And I wanted to chat with you a little bit about it because it's been interesting setting it up. I will say, having gone through the process of setting up something like 7 accounts very quickly, I found the setup process to be very good. I actually thought it was very easy to do. Now, I wasn't the person who had to deal with the DNS records to actually get the macstories.net domain onto those accounts. But the rest of it, I thought, was actually pretty easy. And there's been a lot of criticism, I think, of Bluesky, and some of it is deserved because it says it's federated. It's not really federated, at least not now.
Not yet, at least, yeah.
Right. And on one hand, I feel like I'm not super well qualified to comment on Bluesky because I use it pretty much like a business tool, and maybe you bring that perspective to it too. I don't know. But what do you think? What are you thinking about it right now?
Yeah, I think the post-Twitter rise of, I would say the 3 main competitors being Mastodon, Bluesky, and Threads has been fascinating to watch. Obviously, there are other ones that have bubbled up here and there, but those are the 3 I think that people consider.
Yeah,
really
the biggest, really, yeah.
And I think the thing that really gravitated me towards Threads initially was, I think maybe even naively, a lot of their claims that they would integrate more with ActivityPub and federate, and then seeing the backlash from a lot of Mastodon servers saying we're not going to allow Threads to federate. Because I think the thing that's worth mentioning about ActivityPub is that its open protocol is server-based, whereas Bluesky's open protocol, which I think is called AT protocol, is user-based specifically. So in the world of Mastodon, you're blocking servers. In the world of Bluesky, you're blocking people individually. And I was trying to build a little bit of a following on Threads. I got off of X, the everything app, TM, and decided Threads is going to be my home for a little bit. And I was cross-posting to Mastodon and to Bluesky as well, and just found that Threads was the one that was growing and made the most sense to me. But if I can be totally honest and totally open, I think a lot of what happened with the election specifically turned me off of Threads. I wrote a piece about this on my blog, but the words I use and the words that I use when I talk to people about Bluesky is that I think algorithms failed us pretty largely, and I think the Threads algorithm in particular essentially tricking a lot of people on both sides thinking that the election was an absolute lock despite all polling showing otherwise, has only created more problems than anything else. And what occurred to me really at the end of the day is if Threads ever wanted to add a chronological following feed as the default option, they would have done it a long time ago. I think in a lot of worlds, what Threads is doing is building something that looks a lot like Twitter, but is not. It is a different kind of platform. It is Instagram for text, and they know how to scale Instagram very well.
Yep.
And they know how to monetize it, and they've already announced plans for monetization of Threads. So all of that kind of led me to saying, at the end of the day, do I care that Threads has 250 million users? And at least at the time when I was considering moving myself mentally more over to Bluesky again, they only had 15 million users. I was like, does that really matter to me as much as the actual emotive feeling of using Bluesky? Yeah. No, I would much rather be using something like Bluesky that I think has a larger potential to be better in the future. That said, there's the Mastodon of it all, which I know, I understand probably this audience is mostly on Mastodon more so than other platforms, if I were to guess. Mastodon I like a lot. It's just I just don't feel it's as social as I want it to be, which is, I think, my biggest problem. So Bluesky right now feels the most like a social experience. And for that reason, it's the one that I'm using the most. And at this point, I have more followers on Bluesky than I did on Threads. I don't really mind kind of bailing on Threads. We're still using it for Into the Aether podcast-wise. But mostly that's because it's our bridge into Mastodon. Like, that's how we have an Into the Aether Mastodon account as well.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, yeah, Bluesky is kind of the one for me. I have the most faith in it. I have my qualms, definitely. I think there are some real red flags about the way Bluesky is set up on a protocol level, which, things like being able to, through the API, see who's blocking you is a problem. We've talked about this.
And it's like a fundamental design choice, too, that I think is not like something that's easily changed. That's not like a thing that, they can just flip a bit and all of a sudden you can't see that, right? And the starter packs have potential for harassment as well, because there's no way to take yourself out of a starter pack, except I think if you unfollow the person who created the starter pack.
You have to block them. But also, there's no way to see what starter packs you're in on platform. Again, that's an API level thing that you need to access. And there are websites that have spun up that will show you what lists you're in or what starter packs you're in. But you'd have no way of knowing unless you were using an outside service like that.
Right, exactly. No, it's interesting to me. I mean, from my perspective, Mastodon is kind of like where things start for me, mainly because that's where the bulk, as you said, the MacStories audience happens to be. We moved over. A lot of the listeners of this show and the readers of MacStories went over at the same time. Yet at the same time, there are aspects of Mastodon, as much as I like it, as much as I like the community and the people there, the service itself leaves something to be desired sometimes. And part of that is just by virtue of the way it's designed. For instance, search is not very good. And I'm a person who needs search. I mean, I use these tools not just to communicate with people, but also to find links and find interesting topics to talk about and write about. And I find Mastodon consistently frustrating in that way, in a way that I yearn for the days of Twitter, when Twitter was a research tool for me, and in a way that Mastodon never has been. And Bluesky does have that aspect, which I really like. There are a lot of people. First of all, there are just a lot of journalists and writers there. So you can find a lot of interesting people writing about interesting topics there that aren't just tech. Now, that's the other thing about Mastodon. It's kind of narrowcast in terms of, I mean, it's very much the MacStories audience, but personally, I'd like to have more than that. I want to have, the video game people, for instance, are not on Mastodon almost at all.
No, they all went to Bluesky. Yeah.
And they all went to Bluesky, right? And they were still on Twitter as of just a couple of months ago, many of them at least. And some were on Threads, some of us on Threads. Threads, I think your point about Threads being like Instagram is a good one, because that's what I found that, when I moved to North Carolina, one of the first things I did, which has worked out really well, is I used Instagram as a discovery tool for the area around me. I followed restaurants and bars and, entertainment things and all that stuff as a way to kind of learn the area. And I also followed an awful lot of people making retro handhelds, like modding retro handhelds. So my Instagram is really weird in that way. It's very unlike anything else. And when I went over to Threads, that's what my Threads account was like. And I liked that. And I liked that initially. And I still like that to the extent that stuff shows up. However, it has changed with the way the algorithm is changing over on Threads. And I think you're right. The algorithm is not serving people very well. I like the way Bluesky balances algorithms better, where you're not dumped automatically into the algorithmic feed. You can have multiple algorithms on different topics and different ways to
look at. That's their
at
business model also. It's worth mentioning. Like, long term, the plan is to have a store where you can buy access to algorithms. Like, you can subscribe to algorithms and people can curate them, which is fat. Like, right now they're all free, but eventually there's a world in which somebody who is extremely good at curation, in the same way, Spotify has their extremely curated, well, maybe not Spotify as much anymore, but like Apple Music, let's say, has extremely curated playlists. A lot of people are subscribed to Apple Music specifically because of that curation, and because they know that there are really incredible tastemakers behind the scenes building a lot of those playlists out. similarly, that's kind of what Bluesky is staking some of their future on, is that they can find some people and have them charge for algorithms, which is such a cool conceit.
Yeah, it's a really interesting model because it brings competition to the table, whereas like Threads can just shove down your throat whatever, Threads and Meta think is the right thing to shove down your throat. Whereas if you've got competition, there'll be winners and losers, which I think is great.
Yeah, Threads just launched, I think this week, the ability to subscribe to hashtags. So you can, if you pull down from the Threads logo, there's the For You feed, there's the following feed, and then you can add whatever tags you want, which, at the end of the day, that's basically just like a TweetDeck search, built into the app. That's not as powerful as I think what Bluesky is proposing.
No, I don't think so either. So before we close out this topic, and I do want to mention for people who are listening, I know every time I talk about other services, people get concerned that we're going to leave Mastodon at MacStories, and we're not. I mean, it's actually, as I pointed out in the story when we announced this on MacStories, I said, we actually, when we moved over to Threads, we actually used Mastodon more, and I think that that's going to be true with Bluesky too. We're not really moving there, but we do have.
You're also cross-posting, right? Like you're using.
I am. I'm actually manually. Yeah. I'm manually doing most of the cross-posting still because I want to kind of tailor them to the service because they all do things a little differently. But
that makes sense.
But yeah, we are automatically cross-posting articles, for instance, using Echo Feed, which is Rob Knight's service. And that's been fantastic because I don't have to do that.
Shout out to Echo Feed.
Yeah.
Great service.
So good. So we're doing that for MacStories articles and AppStories right now. And eventually all the podcasts will be on that too, but that requires some more back-end stuff. But yeah, that'll all be cross-posted automatically.
Can I tell you my strange secret?
What's that?
So I use Croissant for a lot of posting still, just to get onto all three services. I wrote a piece about this, but the thing about Croissant that really appeals to me is that it doesn't have a feed at all. It is literally just for posting. Like if I have an idea and I want to get it out there, it's the best way to do that without getting sucked into these services, which are built to suck you in. But the other app that I've been using a lot is OpenVibe, which is another one that allows you to cross-post to all these different platforms. But the key about it is that because the Threads API is not great, they don't pull in the Threads feed. They only pull in the Bluesky Mastodon feed. So it's like the best of all worlds where I can post to all three, but not need to see Threads at all.
That's good.
I love it.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Did you know Croissant, they're working on Mac and iPad for
I did see that.
App.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, for me, I'll use it a lot. I'll use it a lot more once it's on the Mac. And that kind of leads me to the last thing I want to talk about is like, how are you accessing Bluesky? Because for me, what I've done is, and maybe it's because it's only been a week and I set up most of these accounts on a Sunday. And so I've mostly been sitting at my desk working all week. I've been using it on the Mac in a web app, one of those Safari web apps where you just say, add this to my dock. All right.
Yeah.
So I do that and I do like how their web app allows you to go into settings and you can switch accounts really easily. It's not so easy to do that with Threads. With Threads, I have to have a separate web app account for both MacStories and myself. But with Bluesky, I can just go into switch account and I've got, like 7 of them lined up here. So
yeah. The Threads app makes switching accounts a lot easier because I do all the posting for Into the Aether as well. And
you just do that little double tap on your profile
on the
switch
profile
over to the
icon.
other.
Yeah.
But
for Bluesky, I've basically just been using, the mobile app on iOS and the web app on the web. That said, in the past couple weeks, a bunch of, I'd say TweetDeck adjacent services have spun up. None of which I've checked out yet. But I really want to, because that is also one of the things that I think kept me more engaged with Threads, and also keeps me engaged with Mastodon is that kind of TweetDeck layout of the
that
website.
Is nice.
The web version having that as the default, I think, is actually really powerful. And I would love a view like that for Bluesky, especially as I'm starting to follow different algorithms and subscribe to more lists and stuff. I would love to have those feeds kind of laid out separately. Because, I imagine you feel the same way, but as somebody who's covering video game news and stuff, it's really helpful to have a feed or a list of people who just talk about video game news or just news outlets, et cetera, alongside, everybody else that I follow and whatever the For You page happens to be. So right now, app and website, and it's serving me very well.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm basically doing the same thing. One of those third-party web solutions is Deck Blue, and I tried it a little bit, but
what'd you think?
It's very early. It's a little bare bones right now.
Mm.
I'm gonna revisit it in a bit, but I think with all the people moving, 1 million people a day moving to Bluesky, it's probably going to be a lot of development around this service for a while. I'm surprised that there aren't a lot of third-party apps yet on iOS. I don't know. Maybe that's an API thing. Maybe it's more difficult to do.
I would guess. I mean, from what I understand, the API is like fine. I think it's mostly a user-based thing. I think if you consider all of the apps that exist for Mastodon, to me that feels like, people who are technologically savvy, self-selecting to use Mastodon, who are also capable of building apps that make using Mastodon better. Whereas,
and probably willing to pay for them too, because they're picky and
exactly, yeah. Whereas I think, Bluesky starting to pick up more will probably lead some savvy developers to start to build those apps as well. OpenVibe, I think, being a great example of that.
Right.
So I expect to see some in the future, because from what I understand, their API is like open enough to make something like very usable. So
no, that's
I'm
good.
excited about that. That'll be nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Capacities.io. I'm really excited to tell you about Capacities. This is exactly my kind of product because it's all about capturing and organizing information. We all suffer from a lot of information. Information overload is a real problem, and you need a way to process information in a way that makes sense to you so that what's important to you is both captured and easy to find. Capacities is the perfect place to do that. It lets you capture and process information easily wherever you happen to be, and then come back to it later when you're ready. And when you're ready to come back to it, then you can spend some time thinking through it in a focused, distraction-free way, organizing things and putting your thoughts together in a way that makes sense to you. What's really cool about this tool is it's incredibly flexible. It's built for individuals. It's built for people like professionals, founders, researchers, hobbyists, all around the globe. Thousands of knowledge workers are enjoying Capacities' approach to information. Capacities combines the ability to link any notes together with structured and easy to resurface notes, which reduces the cognitive load of organizing your notes in a note-taking app. There are daily notes and a central calendar to anchor you throughout your day. It gives you a timeline of all of your notes and content. This is a little something different than I've seen other apps do, and I love it because it's how I deal with notes. I find them based on when I took them. I always remember a time period when I took them. So between a topic and a time period, I can always find things, and Capacities makes that incredibly easy. Plus, it's available cross-platform and has an offline mode on all devices. The app offers both free and paid plans, and the latter includes an AI assistant, task integrations, and a whole lot more. Capacities is independent and 100% owned by its founders and only financed through its users. That's something that's important and that I really like because it means that they take a user-centric approach. They're not working for VCs, they're working for their users. And that means their approach to development is open and transparent, and they take the feedback of the community seriously. A lot of users of Capacities have had a direct impact on the features and the product's future, which is really cool. Capacities also supports a one-click export. That means that if it's not for you, you can get your notes and information out with just a single click into Markdown files, which is fantastic and makes it incredibly portable across all the tools you already use. To learn more, go to Capacities.io. Capacities.io, a novel approach to note-taking. Our thanks to Capacities for the support of App Stories. All right, Brendon, it's time for your friendly interrogation.
I love that this is the title of the segment. It's so funny.
The friendly interrogation. I think Federico came up with that. But
it's really good.
I want to talk to you about some of the apps you're using, just kind of in your day-to-day.
Some of this is going to be so embarrassing. I'm really excited about it.
It's going to be interesting because I actually don't know the answers to all of these as well as maybe I did with some other people that we've talked to. I want to start with email. What are you doing with email?
Yeah, email is my white whale, and I think forever will be. You have a couple white whales. You and I talk
Oh, I
about this
do.
a lot. You have a couple white whales, but email is definitely mine. I have an unbelievable hate for email as like an idea. I think it is the least efficient, worst way of talking to
I
people.
agree.
The integration with like ad sales and ad tech has just made email like almost entirely useless to me in my brain. Like it just can't parse it at all. So what I'm using currently is just Gmail. I
Okay.
just I just log into Gmail and that's it. I hate it. I don't think it's very good. I don't like using it. I have a couple email addresses that I don't give to people unless I really need them to be able to get in contact with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like people in my family and stuff have like a specific email address that they can reach out to me at, and
Yeah.
that is the only one that has notifications on, et cetera, et cetera. But boy, do I not like it. The closest I ever got to liking an email service was Hey, and then I found that company to be reprehensible and then bailed from Hey.
Yeah.
So I don't use that
We did
anymore.
too.
But that boy, were those like 6 months that I was using Hey, like, oh my God, somebody figured out email. I'm gonna get into this. I'm gonna like it. I'm gonna use it the way everybody wants me to
Yeah.
forever. But I mean that obviously was untenable. So I'm just back on Gmail. If anybody has any recommendations for things that are Hey adjacent or at least can capture that same feeling, let me know. And I like truly to solve a problem like that, I am willing to pay money. Like I would pay money to solve this problem for me.
Yeah. I mean, there's some apps doing screening like Hey did, I think Spark
Yeah.
does screening now, and there's separate services like Clean Email that I use,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think any of them have done it quite as well as Hey did
I agree.
initially.
Yeah.
So,
And
I
from
mean,
what other people I talked to who also left Hey, like no one has really settled on anything. I think
no.
that,
Oh, look,
that is as
I'm the
substantial.
guy. I'm the guy using 3 different email apps right now. So,
Yeah.
I've got Apple Mail for my iCloud account. I've
Yeah.
got MimeStream on my Mac, and I have
Limestream, yes.
Spark, so that we can share emails among the Mac Stories team, which only kind of works because Federico has to always tell me, "Hey, I shared an email with you," because I mean, I can't check 3 email apps all day long.
That's me. Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
feel the same
not,
way.
yeah, it's not ideal. But Gmail, Gmail, that's a good one to settle on if you have to settle on something, because at least the search is really good. You can
Yeah.
find things if you need
Yeah.
to. I keep
Search
it
is
on my
great.
phone for that too, for that very reason, because you really can't beat the search in
Yeah.
Gmail.
Yeah. My favorite email app I think ever was Inbox.
Mm,
That was like the Gmail spinoff team that
yep.
just was like, let's reinvent email from the ground up, and they made Inbox, and it was beautiful. And then they were like, okay, we're going to integrate all the best features from Inbox and Gmail, and then they did away with Inbox and did not integrate all the best features from Inbox into Gmail.
No.
So I feel like it's a cavalcade of nightmares where every time I get into something, it's like, this is a bizarre anecdote, but every time I find somebody who cuts my hair well, they leave. I don't know why this is, but every time I
It's
go
you.
and find yeah, I feel like it's me. Every time I find a hairdresser I really like, I'll get my hair cut from them like 2 or 3 times. Haircuts where I walk out of the place being like, I look good immediately. This is
Uh-huh.
amazing. I finally found someone for me. And then like, 2 or 3 months later, they'll be like, I'm moving across the country. Or most recently, I'm taking my whole family moving to Japan and never coming back. So I don't know.
That's an expensive commute for a good haircut, Got to
It
go
is
all
an
the way to
expensive
Japan.
commute, yeah. But the solve for this, dear listener, if you're out there and you have the same problem as me for some reason, which is unlikely, but I'm going to tell you anyway, find the owner of the hair salon and go to them. That's what I'm doing now, which is basically like using Gmail.
Yeah, now you just, they got to shut down their whole business.
You got to shut down Gmail if you want me to leave.
All right, Brendon. How about task managers? What are you doing there?
Yeah, this is the most embarrassing one, I think.
Good. What is it?
Right now, I'm using Tot by Icon Factory as my task manager.
All right. Well, that's an interesting choice. But
Yeah.
you got 5 dots, so 5 days of the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Tot, for those of you who don't know or haven't used it, is an app. I think how many is? I think it is 7. I think it's 7.
Is it 7? Okay. I
Yes,
couldn't
it's
remember.
7.
Yeah.
So there are 7 little notes. They all use Markdown, which is really nice. I write mostly in Markdown. But it's 7 little notes that are color coded. And those are all the notes you get to write in. and you don't get any more. And if you want to erase a note, you just have to delete everything that's in there. And the first one in my list of dots is my to-do list. And just every day I just write down all the things I need to do, and I go through that to-do list, and I delete it at the end of the day, and I make my way throughout the day. And then all the other dots are for certain things. I have one that's specifically for To the Aether, I have one that's for NPC, one that's for wavelengths, one that's for like other life stuff that I just need to remember. But the first one is always my to-do list, and that is my task manager. I've experimented with a bunch of other ones. I used to use Clear, I used to use Apple Reminders, but I found that using a dedicated to-do app never really worked for me, as well as just the note-taking app that I always have open at all times, all day. It just makes more sense to be using that.
This is why you maybe should try Godspeed, because it is very much like a note-taking app in terms of how easy it is to manipulate the tasks, just like they were notes in a list, and move things around. But yeah, it's part of Set App, or you can purchase it separately. I've been using it for a few weeks, just experimenting with it, and it's kind of sticking. The problem, I think, and they have a web app that is, I think, in beta, so you've got that if you need to use it cross-platform.
That is helpful for me.
It's much better on the Mac than it is on iOS and iPadOS, and the developers know this. It's a small team, and they're working on it, and they're going to get around to it, but right now, for me, that's okay because most of the task management I do happens on my Mac. And usually when I'm on another device, I'm either just checking things off or moving them around, not doing a lot of input very often. So yeah, that's worked out pretty well. Task managers, I think Tot's an interesting choice. I mean, and a good one potentially for some people, because I do that when I get really busy. I keep a weekly note. So every week I start out a note, and it's just got Monday through Friday and a weekend entry. And under each day, I start my day, even though I'm using a task manager, just kind of picking the handful of things that absolutely need to happen that day and writing them down so I don't lose track of them. And then throughout the day, as things are happening, people are telling me things, whatever happens to be, I jot things down there. So it's kind of like a combination to-do list scratch pad. And that, especially when I get super busy, that works really well for me because I don't have to worry about managing another app. I just have this one place where I'm also happen to be doing my writing because it's Obsidian that I can then turn to and look at what's going on in that week note as well. So yeah, I think there's something to be said for just a plain text list of tasks.
Yeah, it really works well for me. And also, like, when I'm at work, I don't have access to Tot, for example, on my work computer. But I do have a MagSafe stand for my phone, and that's where I just have Tot open at all times. So yeah, I'm using it constantly.
All right, makes sense. All right, so we need to talk about writing because you run a website called wavelengths.online where you write about video games, tech, and just about anything else. I mean, you got a variety of cool posts over there, and I expect people really ought to add this to their RSS. I think Wavelengths ended up becoming one of my favorite websites. That, I mean, it's been around for a long time, but I know you've really kind of put more energy into it over the last many months. So there's a lot of great new stuff coming there, as well as your YouTube channel, which obviously you embed those in your website. So it's a good place to go to get all the stuff. But how are you writing those? How are you writing those posts, Brendon? What are you doing?
Yeah, it's a combo between two apps in particular. One is IA Writer, which is where I do most of my writing. When I'm sitting down to write like a real lengthy blog post, not like a kind of shorter micro post or something, IA Writer is where I am sitting down to like focus on writing. I have the new iPad Pro and the Magic Keyboard that comes along with it, and I will throw it in a bag and I will go to a cafe and I will put in headphones and sit there and write until it's over. But on the flip side, if I am writing smaller stuff, a lot of that happens in Obsidian. And I have both of them drawing from the same iCloud account, the same iCloud drive. So I have all of those posts in both places, which is really nice. It's a benefit of using iCloud, I guess, as the backend for both of those. But when I really need to focus on writing, IA Writer is the way to go for me. I tried a lot of other apps, but none of them feel as good to use and I think look as good and get out of my way as much as IA Writer does. But Obsidian is also just fantastic for for keeping track of all of that stuff, linking it all together, and just organizing my thoughts. And then also, and I know you feel very strongly about this, but the research end of posts as well. So like,
Yep.
there's one long form retrospective review that I've been working on for the YouTube channel for like actually months at this point. It's like the most work I've put into a thing like this. And I don't,
Oh, wow.
hopefully it'll come out one day. I don't know. I just need to tell myself to stop at some point. But like, I just have like tens of thousands of words of research and note taking that I've done on that review in particular. And Obsidian makes that possible in a way that IA Writer would not. So, different tools for different things. But when it's like really focusing on writing, IA Writer is the way to go. I will also say Wavelengths is hosted on pika.page, which is the blogging service that I use. And a lot of the micro posts, actually, I just write straight in there.
Okay.
You can write in Markdown on there, and it is fantastic. So I just, if I have something that I really need to get out very quickly, that's where I'll do it.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I think Obsidian's an interesting app to me because I love it, but I've also fine-tuned it to exactly what I want it to be, which is both its strength and its weakness, because you can fall into this trap of trying to make it be everything. Because I've done things like I've made it like a Notion or Airtable type database. I've used it for task lists. I've used it for calendaring, all kinds of things that it can do, but it's not necessarily the best solution. So I've kind of settled back into making it predominantly a writing app. It's research and writing are the two main things that I do in there now.
Man, I was the exact same way. I started using Obsidian, I don't even know when, years and years ago. Maybe not that long ago, but probably like 2021, 22, somewhere in that vicinity. Maybe
that's when it started really picking up.
Yeah, but I had a couple other friends who were using it, and we would just talk a lot about using Obsidian and like, oh, can you believe you can do this? Oh, can you believe you can do this? And I was using it as like my daily journaling. I was using it as my to-do list app. I was similar to you, like everything I could get it to do, I was having it do. And it's like, wow, it's one app that can do everything. And what I have slowly come to realize is that just doesn't work for me for pretty much anything, as we've talked about a lot on this episode already.
Right.
And as we talk about a lot on NPC, even using different devices for different kinds of games, I think separating church and state a little bit is pretty helpful in these regards.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Near and dear to every App Story listener's heart is RSS, Brendon.
Yes.
What are you using for RSS?
Yes. You almost asked, are you even using RSS? The answer is yes.
I almost did. Because not everybody does. And it's very presumptive of me to think that you do too. But I kind of assume that you do.
No, I do. Yeah. I didn't for a long time, though. It's a kind of more recent thing for me. I would say in the past, like 2 years.
Okay.
I started really getting into it. I had a little spell with it. I would say probably in like, I don't know, the like mid 2010s, even somewhere in that vicinity. I was using some stuff. I couldn't even tell you what it was, but maybe just Google Reader. But I took a long break from it as social networks and algorithms became, our lives. And I was like, I don't need RSS anymore. I have this. And obviously that has turned sour. So I'm back on RSS. And I've been using a couple different things, but the one that I've settled on is Readwise Reader. That's the one that I keep coming back to. I have enjoyed and tried other things, Feedbin and Reader and Matter and all these other apps and services, all of which I think have strengths and weaknesses. And honestly, truly, Readwise Reader has a lot of strengths, a lot of weaknesses. I think there are a lot of things I don't like about Readwise Reader, but at the end of the day, it's the one that I reached for the most subconsciously. And I think at the end of the day, like if I'm to sit back and say, I'm testing these 4 apps, which one do I use full time? It's the one that I don't even think about going for when I want to read something. That plus, I just think they have really good text parsing. So if I want to move something over to Readwise, like it is extremely easy, and I know it's going to be pretty accurate. So yeah, Readwise Reader is the way to go for me. I even, and this feels cursed, but I even use the like audio thing where you can like save an article and then listen to it later.
Oh,
I use that
I do
so
that
much.
too.
Oh yeah, you use that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I use that a lot more than I thought. When I'm like cleaning up after dinner or something. I'll
Yep.
just like listen through all the articles I've saved. So yeah, Readwise is it's the way to go for me. I like it a lot. Also, specifically, one of the things that's been really helpful for me is that if you save a YouTube video, it'll transcribe it as well.
Yep.
And that has been a godsend for some of the stuff that I'm working on.
Yeah, I have not done that a lot with that, and I keep thinking that I really ought to, because I've now got like this enormous backlog of YouTube videos in play, and I feel like if I threw some of them into Readwise Reader, maybe the transcription would help me kind of, I don't know, either decide what to watch all the way through or just pull out parts that I want to enjoy. Yeah. Readwise for me, it's been an up and down relationship over the years, in that I like it a lot, but there's always been little things about it that bug me, and I've always been on the cusp of unsubscribing, and then there's something that happens and it pulls me back in. And originally their RSS was a little clunky. They were doing a better job with Read-Later than they were with RSS, but that has changed a lot. I think that they've done a much better job of dealing with people. Well, I'm a very specific kind of RSS person because I have hundreds of feeds, and Readwise was not good at that early on, and it's much better at handling large collections now. So
you were always gravitating more towards Matter of the two. I think of Matter and Readwise Reader as like the two main competitors with one another. Obviously there's a bunch of other ones floating around, but I think that those two are really like in the Coliseum head to head. And you were always more tuned to Matter, and I was more tuned to Readwise. And I have found your writing about those two apps really interesting, because all the things you like about Matter are things I don't like about Matter, and all the things you don't like about Readwise are things that I like about Readwise. So I really think it's like almost proof that both of them should exist, and they're both kind of going after different things. And like, it's not an Alien versus Predator, whoever wins, we lose situation. I think like they'll both just kind of keep on trucking. I will say though, the most recent entrant that I am enjoying a lot more because of its very unique take on all of this is the new version of Reader. The rebranded new version that exists now. I have been enjoying a lot as I test it more. It is on my home screen. I think it's interesting. And yeah, I don't know. It's just something that it maybe won't pull me away from Readwise long term, but I'm enjoying messing with, and I don't know, maybe there's always a chance.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so much overlap between all of these different apps, and they all take a slightly different focus and approach. Whereas, you've got Readwise, Readwise Reader, which has a lot of Read-Later aspects to it, but it also handles RSS and other things. And then you've got Reader, which is now taking more of it's not algorithmic, but it's taking a timeline approach, very similar to someone like you, who maybe got a lot of that news from Twitter in the old days, or Threads or wherever, would gravitate towards that. And then you've got others that are strictly RSS, which is like Lear or Unread or something like that. It's there are a lot of good choices, which is good. And I think really why I gravitated back to Readwise Reader from Matter has a lot to do with the research, because I find that the highlighting, the tagging, the organization, that's all very keyboard driven, especially on the Mac with Readwise Reader, is very, very good. And so when I'm doing stuff that's work related, I like to do it there. The thing that I don't like about Readwise as much is that it's a cross-platform kind of technology under the hood, and at times it does not play very well with, in particular, the iPad. But a lot of that got recently fixed over the summer during the betas. A lot of times the sidebars would show up in the middle of the screen. That wasn't ideal.
The one that always gets me is I just can't get it to sync correctly on the Books Palma, which is really funny. Like that's a device that I use it on like more than you would think. I'll like be at work or be out in the world and like saving a bunch of articles, and I'll get home and I have the Books Palma like next to my bed. And that'll be like where I read before I go to sleep. And sometimes it just like doesn't work. It's funny. Maybe that's just because the Books is using such an old version of Android at this point. But
everything on Android, especially when it comes to e-ink, is just a little harder than you wish it would be.
Look, I love the Books Palma to death. I think that thing's amazing. I use it like as an iPod and stuff, but boy, is it hit and miss with some things like Readwise.
it's really hard to find the right apps too, because not only do you have the Google Play Store, which I don't think is as nice as the App Store in general,
Yeah.
but most apps are not made for e-ink. So,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of them don't look particularly good on it either. But, there are solutions. I've been down that road. I've even got a Books tablet here. So,
You sure do. Yeah,
I,
which I always think about. I mean, as a person, again, I'm taking my iPad to a cafe and writing articles. I always think about, like, what if this was e-ink though? What
yeah.
if?
Yeah, it's doable. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. So let's close out the interrogation with a
Yes.
little bit on podcasting.
This has been brutal, a brutal interrogation.
I know. We're not very.
You got to
nice
rename
here.
the segment.
The unfriendly the unfriendly interrogation. Yeah. What are you using for podcasting? What are you recording with?
Big question. So I'm using for my microphone. If you want to get on the tech side as well, not even just the app side,
Sure.
I'm using the Samson Q9U
Okay.
as the microphone. I will say that I feel very strongly that you can make most microphones sound good. Any microphone you get will work. For Into the Aether, we used the Blue Yeti for years and years and years,
Mhm.
which is a famously bad microphone by a lot of people's standards. Although it is a great entry-level microphone, a lot of people don't rate it very highly. They don't like it very much. They don't like the way it sounds. With the right settings and the right post-processing, you can make most things sound good. That
Yep.
said, I wanted something that I could kind of grow into a little bit more. And the Samsung Q9U sounds great via USB and sounds even better via XLR, but I was using it via USB initially. I've now upgraded to XLR because I at your recommendation, actually, got the Elgato Stream Deck Plus with the XLR
Okay.
input in the
Yep.
back, which is nice. Having some physical knobs and dials for my computer now for all my different volume settings is really nice for input and
Sure.
output. Is great. But now I'm using XLR, which is awesome. And then on the actual app side, this is interesting. This is some hardcore Brendon Bigley lore, but the reason I switched to Mac in the first place was because of Audio Hijack by Rogue Amoeba.
Oh, interesting.
As I was starting to take podcasting more seriously and was using like the oldest, worst laptop I could buy from Best Buy, I was like, I need to upgrade to something that I can take podcasting seriously on. And truth be told, I don't think there are a lot of great apps on Windows for podcasting that are like custom built for that. And Rogue Amoeba's catalog of apps, I think, just felt so incredible out of the box that I wanted to make the switch, and that's what got me using a Mac in the first place, and it's what I still use. I am obsessed with Audio Hijack. I think it's the best. I have had some issues recently with other Rogue Amoeba apps. As much as I love their oeuvre of software, SoundSource in particular has become a real problem for me, so much so that I have uninstalled it for the time being, which feels unbelievable to me as somebody who is such a big champion of that app in particular. But anyway, I use Audio Hijack for recording, for editing, and this is where most people in the podcasting industry who I know make fun of me relentlessly. But I use Ableton Live, which is like DJ and production software for editing my podcasts. I'm not editing as much these days, thankfully. We have a wonderful producer named AJ who produces Into the Aether for us. But when I was editing podcasts, and occasionally when I need to like step in and edit, if AJ's gone, I use Ableton Live because it's what I taught myself when I was in high school and I was DJing house parties and stuff. And I don't need to think about it. And kind of similar to the Blue Yeti, it's like use what you got. Use whatever you have at your disposal. And I had Ableton Live already, and I know all the keyboard shortcuts. And there is literally not a thought that goes through my mind about how to do something when I'm editing.
Yeah.
So
use what you have and use what you know is the thing. I mean, I use Logic, and Logic isn't really made for podcasting either.
Yeah.
It's just where I got started, and I know well, and I know that the way that I edit in Logic is different from a lot of other podcasters, and I never tell them what I do because I'll be teased relentlessly. But it works
same
for me.
here. Yeah, I'm very upfront that I use Ableton Live with people. I think it's funny. But similarly, like it is a completely backwards way of editing podcasts. But I like using it, and I still use it for music production as well. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I use for. I mean, obviously making art and stuff, but I think the one that is the most interesting to me, at least, and is a little bit less of an issue on your end because you're hosting all this stuff on your own, But in terms of podcast hosts, this is a thing I feel very strongly about as somebody who used to work at Anchor, which then became Spotify for Podcasters. I helped the team build that podcasting hosting solution. And in the process of doing that, like, did so much research about every single option that's out there. And, I like Spotify for Podcasters. I think it's pretty good. It has some limitations that prevent me from using it, which is kind of ironic at this point. But, Into the Aether, we needed to move off of it at a certain point because they had a hard cap on the length of episodes. And we have had episodes that are 16 hours long. So couldn't quite stay on Spotify for Podcasters. I think personally, for the money and just based on like the philosophy of the people who work there and everything, Transistor.fm is the best podcast host. That sounded like an ad. This is not paid, I swear to God. Just having used like everything under the sun and having, tried a lot of different people's hosting solutions, I think Transistor is the best there is. They continue to add new features that I think like really blow me away. They just added a podcast network feature, which now for the other shows on our network, TWG, the worst garbage online, we're considering building out this network feature with them. I think it's spectacular. It lays out everything very easily. The analytics are great. So Transistor. And I think that's the full suite of what I'm using for podcasting. Oh, and then the camera setup, very quickly. I use the Elgato Facecam HD Plus, whatever the newest version of that is.
I think it's the Facecam Pro 4K.
Facecam Pro. Yeah, you're right. Yes.
Yeah.
I use that, which doesn't have a microphone, which is worth mentioning.
Yes.
There's no audio on it. It is just for video. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it right now. And then I'm using Camo Studio Pro to make it look better. Because I think it has some kind of... I don't love the way the image looks immediately. Actually, I can maybe even just turn off all my settings and see if that does anything.
Oh,
this is what it looks
something.
like.
Yeah,
Standard.
you look very... Yeah, it grades you out big time.
Yeah.
It's more blue.
Yeah. So this is what it normally looks like by comparison.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Well, our setups are pretty much the same other than Ableton Live, I suppose.
You just got to get into DJing house parties when you're in high school, John. They'll pay you in smoke machines and strobe lights, which is nice.
Nice. I never went down that path. No. Regrets, regrets.
Hey, we all got
All right. We need to finish out today with another NPC style topic.
Sure.
And make it a quick one, but
sure.
I want a game recommendation from you, but not just any game recommendation. I want one for iOS.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. This is so difficult for me. I've been thinking about this literally for like hours.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Do you play many games on your phone?
I do. Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, constantly. Yeah. So like, do I have an emulation handheld on me at all times? Yes.
Yes.
But I can only play them really if I have a seat on the subway, which I frequently don't. And if I don't have a seat on the subway, then I'm usually playing something in my hand. I'll pick this game because it is, I think, a game that might not exist for much longer if I'm reading the room correctly. But I think is one of the best iOS games ever made, and I shout it out whenever I can. There's a game called Domino Drop, and Domino Drop came out, I think, 2011, 2012, somewhere in that vicinity.
Oh, wow.
Has not really been upgraded or updated that much since. Doesn't even, like, if I open it up, like, I'll hold it up to the screen, doesn't fill out the full,
it's
the full
definitely
iPhone screen.
Right.
But it is a version of Tetris that is based on colored dominoes. And is absolutely beautiful, has incredible music, and I think is one of the best games I've ever played. I love it to death, and that is my recommendation. I worry that at any moment something's going to happen with an iOS upgrade that's going to make Domino Drop not work anymore. I have in my 3,454 games played since it came out.
Oh, wow.
Of Domino Drop.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah. So that'll be my shout out.
It's good that it's still here because, I mean, after the whole 64-bit purge, a lot of things went away. But
yeah.
All right. My recommendation is going to be Afterplace. Afterplace is an indie game, has kind of a...
Yes.
I suppose it has a little bit of a retro Zelda vibe to it. It's laid out vertically on the phone, which is fantastic. And I don't know, I don't have much to say about it other than if you've missed this game, you should check it out because it's made by just one person, I believe.
Yes,
and
it is.
it was up for a ADA at one point too. So
Yeah.
it's really one of the better games that I've seen come out that just was straight to the App Store and not, part of arcade or something like that. And worth
I'll say this
picking up.
about Afterplace, and actually I'll also say this about Domino Drop. Don't get discouraged if you're very bad in the beginning. I think Afterplace was a game where I was like, I'm terrible at this, and maybe I shouldn't keep playing it. And then I picked it up a couple months later and really gave it a shot and loved it.
Yeah, yes, you could run into roadblocks pretty fast in that game, but it does pay off to be persistent and keep trying at it because it's a great little game.
Yeah.
All right, Brendon, I think that's it for App Stories.
We did it. We talked about every app on the App Store. Can you believe it?
Oh my gosh. Who needs Federico, really? I mean,
yeah.
We just closed out the App Store.
It's like reading the dictionary.
It is. It is like reading the dictionary. Well, you know what? I want to thank our sponsor again, Capacities.io. Brendon, where can people find you online?
Yes. The best place to find me is wavelengths.online because there's a handy about page with links to everywhere else that I am online. But, every 2 weeks we have episodes of NPC on Mac Stories.
We do.
Into the Aether comes out every Wednesday as well. And then I'm writing on Wavelengths and posting videos just about every week. I've been taking some time off for the holidays and I literally went away. I went on vacation for a little while. But I have some other videos that are in the works. And those are probably the best places, I'd say.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I need to get back on the video train again myself. It's something I did a little bit of, and I've just been thinking and planning and plotting where that's
I've been enjoying the John Voorhees YouTuber beginning.
Shows up for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then then checks out. Yeah, it's been fun. I upgraded my rig a little bit with some accessories from Moment, the camera accessory maker. And
they do I have it? Do I have it in this room? I do. I have their backpack.
Oh, I didn't even know they had a backpack.
It's an amazing backpack. I bought it for a trip to Japan because I was bringing a lot of cameras with me. And,
yeah, it's nice and small.
Amazing backpack. I love it to death. Would recommend.
Good. Yeah. I got one of these magnetic tripod mounts for the iPhone, which is really good for doing top-down video if you're showing something off when you're recording.
Yeah, I don't have I usually have a tripod on my desk because I actually shoot all my Wavelengths videos with my iPhone. So I usually have a tripod on my desk.
I have been using an iPhone and an iPad mini for my cameras. It's nice. Like start with what you got and
start with what you got. I feel that very strongly.
Upgrade from there. That's my approach too.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. You can of course find me and Federico, even though he's not here today, at macstories.net. I am on Mastodon. Just go to johnvoorhees.macstories.net. Follow me there. And I'm on Threads and Instagram and Bluesky. All three places. I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you later, Brendon.
Bye, John.